Welcome to a new season of the Strive 365 podcast, where I, Gareth Turnbull, speak each week with experienced former or current athletes, coaches and parents that have strived their own path from the transition of youth to professional levels in their chosen sport. Here we discover their journeys, learnings and advice to like-minded athletes and coaches, as well as parents who we believe play a pivotal role in the ongoing success of their children's progressions. It is my aim to provide you some tips and insights that will help you on your journey to your next level. We also encourage you to give us a like, share or follow on our various platforms, including our YouTube channel, as well as engage in some of the interactive content which will be new for us this season. Women's Super League head coach and former Socceroo Dario Vidosic is this week's guest on Strive 365. Having played professionally for more than 13 years in the Australian A-League, German Bundesliga, the Swiss, Chinese and Korean Premier Leagues, as well as representing Australia, Dario shares a lot of experiences and advice for aspiring athletes. At only 38 years old, he's now the head coach of Brighton and Hove Albion in one of the best female football leagues in the world. Having cut his teeth as a youth coach at the City Football Group, Dario provides us lessons he's discovered as a young coach learning his craft. Okay, let's go. Dario, thanks for making time to come on to Strive 365, mate. Great to see you.
No worries, Gareth. Yeah, great to see you as well, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, being initially competitors in the A-League Women's here in Melbourne, to then starting our pro license later part of last year, to then not having you back in for part two because you had secured a fantastic job over in the WSL coaching Brighton and Hove Albion, which is where you are today. So yeah, fill me in on how that's going for you.
Yeah, it was look, going back then was some great times. I think, especially on the course, to sit down and being competitors and playing against each other, than to be on a coaching course trying to get ourselves better and to learn and to make ourselves better. So no, that was all great. But look, it's been quite enjoyable now over at Brighton in a very challenging league, taking that sort of next step and developing and learning, and also sort of being completely immersed in football with the men's side as well, having the privilege to go and watch Fabian and the men's team train, and to talk to him, and talk to one of the best coaches in the world, and to learn there as well. So no, look, it's been unreal. It's been enjoyable, sometimes a little bit frustrating, but I think that's all comes part and part with football. So it's been really fun, and learning a lot, and still know there's a lot more to learn and a lot more to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this might be a great place just to start our chat around your current role, your current situation with Brighton and Hove. So started the season with a hiss and a bang, got off to a flyer. You had a bit of a break throughout the Christmas period, which is the winter break, and then you've restarted again. So weekend's result, not so great. West Ham 1-1 at half time, eventually going down. Like, what's the current state of your, just paint the picture for the listeners. What's the current state of the environment, the squad, maybe the board? Like, how are things tracking? Are you kind of on track to meet your objectives for the season? Are you going through a bit of a mid-season slump? Just paint the picture, and then we can kind of dig in some questions from there.
Look, as you were saying, it was a really positive start at the start of the season, where we're still undefeated at home within the league. First half of the season before the winter break, positive, implementing a new style of play, setting foundations, changing habits, bringing in a lot of things that were quite foreign to the players. So it took them a little bit of time, but they adapted quite quickly. We were able to get good results in that time. Been a little bit unlucky just before the Christmas break. We lost Fran. She went away with the national team, got injured with her calf, was out for 3 months, and sort of went through a period just before that Christmas break where we were pretty much down to about 14 players. And then, took some of them a little while, and through that break, sort of as they returned back, we were still rehabbing, we were still looking after them. And then first game, unfortunately, in the FA Cup that we sort of planned everything around to get us back in, and got cancelled due to weather. Pitch was frozen. And then we got hit with 5 games in 2 weeks with players returning. We were unable to have that sort of game to help lead us into it. And then just trying to find that rhythm again, and getting players also that were coming back from a little bit longer injuries, So yeah, again on the weekend, disappointing result, but I think it was a lot of sort of uncharacteristic mistakes from us. We weren't clinical enough in front of goal as well when the chances presented themselves, especially in that first half. But look, I still think with the ball we were a lot better. We're starting to get that sort of back, and now it's just about being more clinical and also tidying up those mistakes that we've been making of late.
Mate, you mentioned 3 or 4 things there, like new style of play, new culture for yourself, international duty, fixture congestion. There's 4 or 5 different little challenges there as head coaches that you are needing to navigate. Now, not every coach at every level has got those sort of considerations to factor in, but let's just dig into a couple of those. So the congestion of fixtures. So 5 games in a short period of time. You're playing in the league, you're playing the FA Cup, you're playing the League Cup. So you've got 3 different competitions competing as well with your injuries. So smaller squad. How are you approaching that? Is it reliance on the youth players coming through? Are you rotating your squad the best you can? Are players just having to suck it up and go? Like, just talk to me and coaches sort of maybe in this sort of space or getting closer to the space of management of squad and different competitions. How are you finding it? What have you found? What can you give us as advice? What's your learnings around trying to navigate those tricky periods?
Probably a little bit of everything that you just said. So it is something you just had to get through it. Others we had to look after because they were on minute restrictions. So I think there was one game when I had maybe 2 games within that 5-game stretch where I had one player on the bench that was actually able to play 90 minutes. That wasn't on a match restriction. So then you sort of have to juggle it. You have to then, and then we had one game where the unexpected happens, where another player gets injured, she's forced off, and then that sort of changes things where now someone that you didn't plan or minutes had to increase for someone else. So it was a tricky period, but I'm sure I'm not the only manager in the world that's had those problems where these things sort of creep in, and it was all at an unfortunate time where it felt like everyone at the same time and everyone in the similar positions was sort of down. So we had to alter things a little bit, change the system a little bit because we just didn't have the players for those positions. But also the winter break, that was probably the first in Australia that we didn't have winter breaks. We'd just play all the way through. We'd only stop for the international break. So even that, and then weather coming in and trainings being sometimes not cancelled, but we'd have to push them later in once the pitches would defrost, or we'd go on to one of the smaller pitches that heating on it. So constant different new things, and we had to learn from, we had to adjust from. But at the end, it is what it is in a way. You can't make excuses. No one. It's sort of something I said to the players, and something I learned as well as a player, that in the world currently, and I think it's always sort of been like that, especially in the professional footballing world. No one cares as soon as you cross that white line. No one's going to ask you, "Oh, did you sleep perfectly? Did you have perfect lead up into it?" That's from a coach, that's from a player. So it's one of those. We spoke about it. We said it is what it is. We have to look after ourselves. We have to recover, and we have to do everything that we can to get through the period and try to get results through it as well.
How much are you leaning on your sports science and medical department? Because you mentioned restrictions. So that's a player that, you might go, we're earmarking for 60 minutes maximum, or they're only good for, 15 minutes off the bench, or we want to get them 15 minutes, so therefore they can do 45 in the following game. How critical is that department, that medical, sports science, human performance department for you as a head coach to lean on, or are you leaning off your own observations, experiences as a player to now understand how much a player can and can't give?
I think it's also the context of the game as well. So in one of them in the League Cup, we had Durham. That was the game that was cancelled. So we played them then in the midweek. We were 3-0 up, I believe, at halftime. So then the message at halftime was just basically keep possession. We don't need to score any more goals. Try to eliminate transitions as much as possible. Just basically play possession in their half. Nothing silly. Look after ourselves, because again, we had the game comfortably. We were doing well. We weren't really threatened. So then we sort of, the approach then changes. Instead of going and playing normally, we just sort of said, okay, let's really be patient. Let's really wait for the moment. So you sort of have to be smart through those periods, and that's the way sort of my idea of football is, to try condense the pitch, play in the opponent's half as much as possible, play in the final third, limit those transitions, and just be constantly on the attack. So that was, you have to sometimes be smart within the games, and then, but then excuse me, and then some other ones that are, we had Liverpool that apply a man-to-man press. That was the first game back. Very deadly on transition. So there we just couldn't adjust to it early. First game back, probably the nerves. Haven't played for over a month since the winter break, and it took us a while to get into that game. Then mix in Arsenal midweek, and then another trip to Manchester. So there was, I think, to Liverpool it took us about 7 hours to get there by bus. There was an accident on the road. To Manchester it took about 6.5 hours by bus. I think there was also an accident on the road. So there's all these things that sort of pop up, and a lot of it has to come back down to the players. What are they doing throughout the day? Are they eating correctly? Are they looking after themselves? Are they hydrating? Are they stretching? Are they doing all the extras that will help? So we had a good bunch. We got through that period, and then now we're getting pretty much everyone back when the games have sort of lightened up a bit. So a little bit unfortunate timing, but good learning for me as well personally. So it was enjoyable, even though the results weren't there. But there was a lot to learn, especially for that first time having the break. The potential of games being cancelled through that period. So a lot of things to learn from, and it'll be good for next season during that period if we're in that same position again.
You talk about the travel there, so I'm quite keen to learn more about this as well. So from a A-League women's perspective, let's say we're playing in Melbourne, we'll train the day before the game, morning of, do our line meetings, and effectively players are out of the building by, let's say, midday, right, roughly. And we might play the following day at, I don't know, say 5 o'clock. So they'll assemble around, I don't know, 2:33. So there's this huge chunk of time between them leaving the training facility and then arriving at the match facility independently that we don't have any control over. So we're hoping that they are managing themselves. Equally, if we play away, we fly the day prior. We'll train in the morning, fly. It's a bit of a longer day, obviously, with travel, and sometimes, as you said, accidents or delays at the airport, etc. Get to the hotel, generally have a dinner, and depending on the sort of feeling of the group, we might do a quick team meeting that night, like name the team, name subs, go through set pieces, and that's pretty much it. Free time, and then the next morning you've got a lot more control, right? You've got breakfast at the same time, walk and stretch, team meeting, pre-match meal, travel to the ground, play. What I believe, well, I've sort of done some data, and our form away from home over the 6 seasons I've been there have been exponentially better than playing at home. And I think a huge part of that is down to the ability to manage that time leading into the game. How are you, like, what is it for you guys? Just sort of maybe paint the picture for me, like playing at home versus playing away. You spoke about the bus. Now that's often longer than an aeroplane. Like, is it always the same? Is it always the same model? You bring them in to a hotel the day before a home game to have them nice and close as well, or are they again a bit like what we have in the A-League independent and arrive at the ground? Just paint the picture for me. I'm curious.
Yeah, so for the away games, it's quite similar to to Australia, where we'll travel usually the day before. We'll train in the morning. We'll jump on the bus, and then we'll make our way to wherever we're going. Obviously, being down the south, once we have the northern games, then it can become, especially if you play on a Saturday, then you get stuck in the Friday traffic. If there's accidents on the road, if you're unlucky, it can become very, very long. Like we were stuck due to an accident. It was closed in front of us. We were stuck for about an hour and a half in the same spot. So that then delays everything. You get there late, dinner's late, and it all feels a little bit rushed. So, these are just parts of the travel that can happen. It's happened in Australia where flights have been delayed, or sometimes they've even been cancelled, where we've sort of gone from one airline, quickly ran across, quickly had to book separate flights, get to another airline, and had to change everything. So, but yeah, look, on the home games, we just meet at a hotel on the day. So we go there for pre-match meal, have our meeting, and then we head to the stadium. So look, in terms of the setup, it's quite similar. There's still that travel, even though it's not on an aeroplane, it's still sometimes very long bus trips. I think the shortest trip we have is about an hour and a half or something like that to Palace, which is the closest game to us. West Ham on the weekend was also in London, but that took about 2 hours the day before to get there. So that's probably roughly about the closest if there's no traffic, if it's quite smooth. And then, yeah, the further ones are the, Everton's, Liverpool's, Manchester's, even into Birmingham when we played Villa, can be about 4 to 5 hours. So, yeah. And so that's something also now we've got to deal with, where a lot of the games now are away from home and a lot further to the north. So especially that first week of the season was very, very tough. We'd arrive back after we played Liverpool and Manchester. We arrived back about 3-4 a.m. And then we had a game midweek as well. So, that was made it even more important, the recovery. And then we train in the afternoons to try to give them that catch up on their sleep. So, it's very tough, but it's a little bit the luck of the draw. If you're a bit lucky, you get drawn at home and you have your fixtures at home, which helps a lot. But we got sort of drawn and had those two fixtures very, very far away, and then had Arsenal in between that. So, it made it quite tough. But, in terms of the overall, it's sort of quite similar with the travel and the stays in the hotel.
What about like a normal week? So let's say you play on a Sunday. You've only got one game this week as well, right? And you've only had one game the previous week. You've got one game the next week, right? So just to keep it really simple, like, are you guys training Saturday? It's a -1. Friday's your tactical. Thursday's off, like 2-day lead in. Are you doing a 3-day lead in? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, we're doing a 2-day, so 2-day off, 2-day game. Something I'm probably thinking about, might try maybe later in the season just to see how it goes, is maybe a 3 off 1 game, just to see. So you have that a bit more 3 sessions where you could build in development phase, tactical phase, and all that. So we'll talk. We've spoken a bit about it, but at the moment we sort of, because again we've been almost unable to train just due to the schedule. But it's something that we'll maybe look at and test that as well and see how that goes, where we get 3 good solid days of recovery, and then we'll have that -1, and then perhaps maybe gets us in a little bit fresher, a little bit more chance to learn with 3 consecutive days. So it's something we'll try and we'll see, and then we'll see what we'll use then for next season.
What's your thoughts on training on a -1? So it's something that I believe is pretty consistent throughout professional football, but maybe for amateur or social or semi-amateurs, it's not done. It's like, oh no, we need to be fresh going into the game, so we don't train on -1. Whereas, what's your advice to younger coaches listening around trying to get players in on -1? What's the value of it, do you see?
I think it's just that I think that -1 is more like a mental preparation, because the session itself is not massive. It's fairly short. It's fairly sharp. Few little tactical elements, little bit of game, bit of emotional, just to get them in competitive, feeling sharp, feeling good for the next day. But look, I've sort of experienced that as well. When I was finishing my career, played in the local league in Melbourne while I was coaching in the academy. So, I think it's just once you sort of get a little bit older, you sort of understand it. But always that day before, you'll sort of try to get yourself a little bit loosened up, go out, have a bit of a run, just prepare the body, prepare the mind for the next day. So I think the body is quite good at adapting for whatever it is. And once you go through something for a while, so even if we say train 4 days straight, had the day off before the game and played a game, after a while, it would probably feel normal. Probably initially it'd be a little bit of a shock because it's different, but I think with any sort of training, it's a lot of it's mental. I find that it's okay. You can work on your fitness, and training is obviously important to get fitter, to get better, and as a squad as well to be better. But I think a lot of it it's that mental preparation, and also what you do, because you're only an hour and a half on the training pitch. It's what are you doing for those other hours where you're at the club, where you've got all the resources to do what you need to do, but then what are you doing when you're away from the club? Are you and look, some people like to be fully immersed. They like to think about it. They like to jump on huddle, watch, while others sort of maybe want to just relax, not think about football. And so everyone's a little bit different. But I think as long as you're doing what you need to do to get yourself 100% ready for match day, and I'm sure everyone does. Some maybe just need a better education as to what that looks like. They might think doing this is good, but there might be a better way. So a lot of it's like that learning process where sometimes you try different things and then you just see how you feel and how the body goes for the match.
So that kind of education around the mental preparation, even the emotional preparation. So For me, that comes down to the leader of the environment. So in this case, you as the gaffer, you have staff that can help lead and drive some of that education and different components. But how big are you on that preparation, like as in terms of you leading that, like the mental side of stuff? Like, what are some of the things that you're drip feeding in throughout the week, or is it around match day or -1 to help your players get in that state ready to perform?
Sometimes it depends on the squad, depends on the circumstances. Is everything really, really positive? Is everything now, probably at the moment, results haven't been the greatest, so everyone's a little bit down. And then now we've sort of broken up for the international break, so we won't see each other all together as a team for a little while. So I think it becomes like a day to day. So I don't like to really plan anything. You sort of just get a feeling of what's needed at the time. How's the squad feeling? How are they looking? What's the energy in the place like? But a lot of it, I think, because of the way we play, it has to be a lot of mental. There's a lot of cues. There's lots of in each phase how we play. So you have to be mentally switched on. You have to be prepared. You have to know your role in every certain time, and we practice it. So now it's just about talking about, can you play the game sort of, you can play it in your mind all day. So you don't get fatigued there, where you can sort of close your eyes or stare into the wall or get, things at home and mimic sort of situations. So everyone maybe can do it in a different way, but I think, the way we like to play and the mechanisms and then excuse me, and then all these sort of different things, I think it is a brain game at the end. Football, our legs just help us. So it's it's important to have the brain fresh, to be clear in what you need to do, clear in your role, and a lot of that is then through video, through discussion, through training, and then again it comes down to the players as well to take initiative if they feel like they don't understand, that they need to come and talk and get the answers, because we always offer it. We always say, even if you think you're going to sound dumb, doesn't matter, come and ask the question. We'll always appreciate people coming, wanting to, one, get better, and two, to be clear in what they need to do. And then that not only does that help the individual, but it also helps the collective as well.
Absolutely. You've mentioned a few times now that, like, the style. I haven't watched any of your games, so I don't know, but I can only assume you've come in heavily influenced by the Melbourne City, Man City, the City Football Group style of play. I'm assuming you're trying to implement that at Brighton, or am I completely off the mark here and Brighton have their own DNA?
No, look, you're not too far off the mark, but mine was never a Manchester City or a Melbourne City style of play. So I was never dictated to say I had to play this certain way. This was a way of me wanting to play well before I even got to Melbourne. So it's something that I've admired. It's a way of football that I've wanted to play. And it probably all came from Barcelona, Pep's Barcelona. Following, even I remember there was things coming out when he was at the B team at Barca. He had all the Busquets, who else was in those squads at the time? Thiago, Alcantara. So there was a lot of players that were sort of, that went from that team, then went into the first team, and the football that they just played, it was, I never wanted to miss a game, because they were just, I was in awe of how they were playing football. Some of the probably best football I've ever seen to this day. And that's probably where that real love of what they were doing and always wanting the ball. So it's sort of a reflection of myself as a player, the way I wanted to play. When I didn't have the ball, I sort of felt anxious. I wanted to get it back. I didn't, I wanted to press. I wanted to try to get the ball quickly as possible, and then keep the ball, play, try to find ways to score. And so it was sort of a blend of both, but it was always that sort of football that I enjoyed. And then obviously it matched up nicely at Melbourne, that they were, when Pep obviously came, that influence then grew even bigger, the way that everyone wanted to play within the group and the way Melbourne City liked to play. So I think it just, felt right. And but look, I was never sort of, when I was there, never dictated to say I had to play this or do that. So I had still opportunities to put my own way of playing it, and but it was always a way that I felt most joy and I wanted to enjoy to watch my team play and to sort of play maybe a way that I didn't really get the opportunity to play as a footballer.
Yeah, right. That's great. The opportunity to go to Brighton now just brings back to that kind of part of your journey. So were they impressed by you, your coaching style, what your team at Melbourne City was delivering? Was that like the big draw card for them, or did you go through like a normal interview process and you happen to be the best candidate available for them at that point in time? Like, just let me in on kind of that recruitment piece into Brighton.
So it's actually quite simple. It's so Brighton's a very big data-driven club, and so I was also within that data for the coaches. So we'll never know. Like even some of the people that work there that send me sort of fair scores and all different things. I've sort of asked a little bit to be a bit more to try and get a little bit more detail about it. And even when I came, I said, I'm really interested about how they get that together. What are they doing? But even suppose it's that detailed that there's an analyst that they code every single action within a game of every single player, and then that algorithm then gives that player a certain rating. So it's very, very high, everything that goes into it, even they can't fully explain it almost. So it's there was all the criteria that I sort of ticked. I was one of the best candidates that they searched around the world. I was sitting at home in Melbourne one night. I was sort of doing the recruitment, funny enough, for Melbourne for the following season, getting prepared, talking to agents, doing all that. So I was pretty much the head of recruitment at City. I was just waiting for a message, and I thought it was, and then I saw it was Mike that sent me a message saying he's from Brighton Hove Albion, and he was sort of trying to find my agent to talk to him, and I told him I don't have one, so you probably won't find. I can help you. You won't find anyone. And then he just gave me said, could we call? Could I speak to you? And said, could we arrange a chat? He goes, don't have to prepare nothing. Just tomorrow night, just with a couple people. Jumped on the following night, had a discussion with them. The following night again, one of the board members was unable to jump on the call, so then she jumped on separately the next night, and then the third night they called me once more and offered me the job. So just casual talks, I think, just to maybe get to know me just a little bit more, but they're very, very thorough. I've seen now with the players, the dossiers that are put together, the sort of character checks from a lot of people. So I know they spoke to a couple of people from Melbourne, with Stoddy and with Ben. So they reached out to a lot of people to check how I was, that it was the right person coming into the environment. But in terms of myself as a coach, it was just ticked a lot of boxes that the data, and it was quite a quick process in terms of being offered the job. But then the visa sort of kicked in, and that took a little bit longer, and went through a 3-person panel that were a little bit undecisive, or it took a lot longer than expected. And then eventually it all got green lighted, which was good. So it was a good time. It was unexpected because I didn't even think it was possible because of the licenses. So that was one of the stipulations that I had to, within the first year, jump on the A license, which I'm currently doing. I've done the first sort of block. There's 5 more blocks to go, and so it's something that I was planning to do eventually, to head overseas and to do my licenses there as well, obviously to help because of the the AFC not being recognised. So it was all a sudden thing. But I think that's one thing I've learned in football, that everything can change overnight, and it's probably a message that I've said to, when I was an academy coach, when I said to the girls, I've sort of said to everyone that you just never know who's watching. And now with technology and all these different things, the football world is smaller and smaller, and you just never know. It could be, for a player, it could be one performance, and then for coaches or support staff, you just never know when that call might come or that message might come, and everything changes.
What a great story. Thanks for sharing. And I was thinking exactly the same. You never know who's watching, or you've got to assume that people are always watching. And I think the second part of that is for you to go down this road of, I'm going to coach things that I inherently believe in, how I want the game to be played, stay true to my beliefs and philosophy, and not get necessarily worried about or detracted from what other people are doing, because for those who didn't watch your Melbourne City team, it was a very different approach. No one else played that way, that super high focus on possession, centre back stepping in the midfield to create box and create an overload. It's quite a distinctive style, right? But no one else is really doing that. And you were not only successful, but you stayed true to that through some challenging moments as well. So yeah, you can reach the next level by doing it your own way, is kind of the message that I always listen to, and picking up from that as well. So yeah, some really good advice there. I guess just to sort of close the chapter on the Brighton part, now you're still a young coach, right? In now probably the biggest league in the world for women's football. How are you, and you're Australian, so how are you dealing with those two big stereotypes? Young manager and someone from the other part of the world. I assume Ange is probably experiencing it a little bit with Tottenham, but how have you found that initially? And then are there some things that you're working through that have helped you kind of stay true to your principles, or is it a real struggle from week to week being both a young Australian manager in a top flight European league?
I think you're always learning. I feel as though, like, where I am currently in terms of just myself personally to the coach that I was last year, that it's almost night and day, and it's also from the year before. So it's only my third season as a head coach. So it's been, it's constantly looking to evolve, to get better, and especially here where we've set quite lofty targets. We want to be in that top four. The top four has been, well, at least the top three has been quite set, almost in stone for the last many years, where it's been Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City. Man United have also now joined into that top four. So it's a great challenge, and it's one where you sort of learn and get to know, especially in the first year. We probably didn't have that luxury with the time differences and to be able to stay up all night and watch the WSL. So it's sort of been a crash course in learning and getting to know the opposition, getting to know coaches, getting to know the new coaches come into the league, and then myself, can my ideas sort of work here. So you have to you have a short amount of time to try to figure that out, to implement new ideas, to change some behaviors, to sell your way of playing. And in the first probably 2 weeks it was tough. There was a lot of questions, there was a lot of because it was very foreign to a lot of them. And our first game was disaster. Like, I'm talking disaster. In our first practice game, and everything was wrong. Nothing went right. And then once we sort of had a chat after that, a bit of a stern chat, to be fair. Once we played that second game, and they sort of then experienced what I was talking about, and they got a lot more joy. They seen then what was happening. And I think after that game, there was complete buy-in. They then saw, we've not done this before. It's football sort of seems much easier now. And then I understood that part would come, that, they were questioning a lot. Like, you really want me to do that? Like, and until they experienced it, and a lot of this year is not just for me, but for girls as well. Like, if I talk about, like, going back when we played Arsenal for the first time, normally whenever you saw, like, last year Brighton or any of the teams below the top three, even the top three, to be fair, when they played Chelsea, the games would become very, very cagey. Even City would be a little bit more passive. But we went to Arsenal. I said, let's go man-to-man pressure, and we're going to play the normal way we always do. And I think it didn't go well that night. We didn't apply man-to-man pressure once. We started pressing differently, and it was all that. And then also when you walk into the Emirates, it's quite a it's almost like a Colosseum type stadium where you see it on TV, and then when you're actually there and you walk into it, it can feel a little bit daunting. So it's then something to go, this crazy Australian guy's asking me now to go out, press Arsenal man-to-man, play our football. And we didn't do that, and we got punished for it. But then, upon reflection, when they look back, when we spoke about it, they said, like, the solution was there. And when we applied it, it was quite easy. So it's about changing mindset a little bit, that feeling of belonging, to feel like, you can go there and you can do something. And then, we had a good challenge against City, where unfortunately we went down in round 2. Again, put up a good fight. And, Chelsea was a similar one. So it's about, changing mindsets a little bit. But, at the end, you always got to stay true to what you want and just try to evolve it, try to make it better, try to learn. There's a lot of, even within the academy, the under 21s, they're playing with many great players on the men's side. So a lot of talking to other coaches, and then also, like we had on the course, where you have a chance to work with other people, see different ideas. So there's always that ability to get better. And I understand as well for myself, this is only my 3rd year, and in my 3rd year, I've been thrown into the best league in the world. So, I know I'm can and will get better. So it's just about now, trying to help the players, and also not just saying this is the only way we're going to do it. You have to do it within a way that your players can also first do it, and that they can have success doing it and feel confident and to be able to play football.
You mentioned the third year as a head coach. It's been a rapid rise, right? So I feel like we're working backwards in a timeline here. But if we bring yourself back to Melbourne City, even before the A-League Women's, you were within the academy for a period of time. So, and then we'll get to your playing career shortly. So having a long professional playing career, playing for the Socceroos would have helped form your ideas around the game identity. But spending time now as an academy coach at a club, at a decent club in Melbourne City in the boys' environment, and then as an assistant coach in the A-League Women's, and then taken over as the A-League Women's head coach. Like, just talk to me about those sort of formative years in terms of how it has been, what sort of role it played in terms of getting you to where you are now, in terms of time on the grass, finding out your identity, making your mistakes, refining those, developing rapport with players. I'm assuming it's pretty critical, but what other elements of that time or those times do you look back and go, this was really important for me to get right, or experience, which has helped me to get to where I am now?
Look, my sort of first, it was during that sort of COVID period where with my playing career, I sort of decided there was an opportunity within the City Academy. I was looking to continue in Asia with a team in the CFG, but with COVID and all the border lockdowns and having a young family as well, I sort of decided, that was, and then I also had a bit of a niggling back issue. So I thought, I didn't want to do any, further damage. I wanted to be able to play with my kids when I got older. I sort of felt, I've done enough. I know this is something that I'd like to do, head into coaching. There was a good opportunity with the under 16 boys in the academy where a coach had just left. And, I had already done my sort of badges in preparation for that transition. So, it was a good opportunity. And yeah, it was sort of cut short as well, just due to COVID. I think we only played just the first sort of qualification rounds, and then we played, I think it was barely half a season, and then the competition got cancelled due to COVID. And then decided, my father was the coach at Melbourne City, and with his experience, and to go into that sort of professional setup, to learn from him as well. I felt, at the time, he was a great person to learn from, to experience it as an assistant, to prepare for games where you had opponents that you could study tactically, you could develop plans, how to play against them, while in the academy space, you wouldn't really know unless you already played them. You wouldn't be able to get footage and play. So that was something I was probably more interested, was that tactical side and how to develop players and to bring out those sort of tactical systems and different ideas. And, so it was enjoyable. And look, I think you need a little bit of luck as well. I think I was sort of fortuitous, where Paddy got the offer over in France at Troyes. He went over, and then my dad, he got the first team men's job. And I'll never forget it, because it was like a day before we left to go to Wellington for round 1 that I was told that I'm going to be the head coach now of the women's team, and I wasn't allowed to tell them yet. So we arrived at the airport. Everyone saw my dad wasn't there. They're asking, where is he? I said, he's not coming. They thought I was joking, I said, no, seriously. And then I wasn't allowed to tell the girls. They were all quite stressed. They weren't sure what happened, thinking, did something bad happen? But then I wouldn't be there if something happened. And all these different things. And, I just sort of wanted to tell them, but we knew that we had a game. We know we wanted to start the season well. And, we had a good season, and then told them after the game, the bad news was that they would be stuck with me now for the rest of the season. So, so look, again, if that didn't happen, who knows if, this all might not have happened. So sometimes it's like a perfect storm. You need that little bit of luck, and then the rest comes down to, that work ethic and, wanting to give your best to your players, having an idea, trying to, develop that idea the best you can, give your players success. And look, that was something that we were able to do at Melbourne City last season through a lot of, ups and downs through the season, especially midway point where we lost Holly in round 5. Then we lost, well, not lost, we sold 2 of our key players overseas. But I think, at the end, it's, I was never in it to, for myself. Because I think if you do the right things and you control everything, then that can happen. And, it was funny enough. The girls were asking me, are you still going to be around? I'm like, well, where am I going to go? Like, it's more, I want you girls to achieve your dreams. I know they had their dreams. They wanted to play overseas. They wanted to play for the national team. And I wanted to help them as much as possible to achieve that. So when Torpy had the offer, I said, go. If you're happy, go. Lizian the same. So I was never going to be the one to stand in their way. So whenever they asked me, I said, listen, if that's what you want to do, pack your bags and I can drive you to the airport if you want. So, it was always about that. And then, luckily enough, in a way, yeah. So through that sort of by chance, getting the job where everything sort of aligned at the time. And then, very quickly after that, then to get the text message and jump on a plane and head to the other side of the world. It's all, sometimes you don't really get a chance to sort of step back and think about it, but it's all happened very, very quickly. And it's just, just keep moving forward and keep trying to get better and just try catch those top 3. That's the toughest job.
Hey, mate, we could probably should have done a whole podcast episode just on the coaching piece, but I do want to bring in the other half, which is your playing career, which is certainly longer than your coaching career and equally as impressive. But just to maybe make that transition between the two, the question I've always often thought about, being a professional player, that is, and then moving into coaching. I often see it as an advantage. I was never a professional player, so I had a reasonably okay amateur career, which has allowed me to experience certain things, but I've never been in a professional or an international changing room. So I'm assuming it's an advantage when you come across the coaching side of it, only if this is the but bit, only if you do the time as a coach as well. You can't just finish your playing career and then be a decent coach, because they are quite different roles, right? But how is being an ex-professional assisted or accelerated your journey as a coach? And speaking to coaches who maybe have not had that depth of a playing career, is it still a negative? Is it a disadvantage? Or are there ways that you think that they can view that as an advantage because they might be able to start their coaching badges earlier, for example? Like, how is that, I guess that topic around ex-pro into coaching, not ex-pro into coaching, how do you see that?
Look, I think the only real advantage is probably that the understanding of the change room, understanding of, different things that can happen to players, how like I've dealt with certain situations that I've been put in throughout my career, how different players have responded. So you sort of, by being in the change room and with coaches and different coaches. So, being a professional, you are coached by very, very good coaches, pro level coaches at the highest level. I was coached by Ange in the national team, in the junior setups as well. So, there's that opportunity where you can learn from them if you're open to it. So not everyone is. There's a lot of professional footballers that have no interest in it. I was sort of, I got that probably around 24 or 25 that I really got into it. I started to look at the game differently. I started to think more about it. Even when I played, I was sort of curious about the space and how to manipulate and how to, do certain things. So I sort of found that part. But I think, just because you're or were a professional footballer doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to be a good coach. I think you have to be a good, have a complete understanding of also the emotional side as well, dealing with players. You might not have to be a professional footballer, could be very, very good on the training pitch, but then you might not be able to bring those ideas. And how do you bring those ideas to the team, and how do you deal with different moments? So there's so many different things and different elements. When it's when all is going well, it's quite easy. Then can you keep yourself sort of even when things are good, not to get too high, when things are low, not to get too low. So there's then dealing with staff. So I went from 4 to 5 people staff in Melbourne City to now about 20 to 30 different staff and a full academy underneath. So there's dealing with a lot more people. There's a lot more meetings. There's a lot more, we had like one physio. Here we've got a head of performance, head of physios, head of doctors, doctor, 3 physios, masseuses, a nutritionist. So there's so many more people, and they all look to you as the coach. You sort of set the tone, you set the culture. So it's almost the first person that people look at inside the room. So it's I think it has to be a blend of everything. I think if you're just, I think with being an ex-professional, it's, when if I need to help players, I'm able to, because I've experienced it. I've done it. There's different scenarios that I've been through as a winger or as a midfielder, or playing against defenders, how they would stop me, how I would try to stop them. So I can almost help everyone on the pitch through like that player to ex-player. And then it's also, so there's so many different elements. And I think, there are some, as being a ex-footballer, that can help, but there's definitely no guarantee that just because you play professionally that you will be able to coach at a professional level as well, because when you're as a player, it's very solo, it's very individualized. You just have to worry about you. It's, you just want to, even though it's a team, of course, you want everyone to do well, but you only have to really worry about yourself. And when you become a coach, you have to worry about everyone at the training center, everyone at the club, how you portray yourself to the media. Pretty much everything you say carries weight, and how is it interpreted? People are listening during those times. So even on days when you're tired or you're frustrated, you have to be able to look after those emotions. So look, it's again, we could probably have a separate podcast just on that alone, and speak probably over an hour of all the different things. And I'm sure plenty about that as well, all the dealings, and how you have, like, on the weekend I had my centre back a day before the game, couldn't do it, her calf, and you have to change everything quite quickly. So a new signing comes into the start, crash course and everything. And so these are just, some of the obstacles that are faced, but it's, every day you have to be ready. You have to have the right answers. You have to be able to deal with a lot of people, with board, talking to the board, talking to the owner. So, it gets bigger and bigger the higher you go. And you need to sort of have a blend of everything. Otherwise it can become very tough.
I spoke about it in the intro, right? So over 13 years professional career, played in Europe and Asia, as well as Australia and for the Phoenix in New Zealand. 23 caps for Socceroos. You've had a fantastic career. If I take you right back to the beginning of that, you started off with the Australian Institute of Sport, the AIS, right? So that no longer exists in its current format, but that was for those who don't know, like a centralized environment in Canberra, where Australia the government had poured money into different sports, and those identified would come into Canberra, live there, train and act like a professional, learn their craft, and then hopefully head off overseas to the professional stakes of whatever sport they were in. A lot of the athletes listening in are probably around this AIS sort of tier of athlete, right? Not quite ready to go overseas, hopefully striving to do that, maybe in youth national setups and whatever their sport is. Just take us back to that part of your journey, the real formative years. So what are some of the things that you guys were taught or educated or encouraged to do more of? Because ultimately it worked, right? You got out of Australia, you had a good career, you represented the national team at the highest level possible, and you made a living from it. And that's what all the athletes here are striving to do. So yeah, it takes back to that part of your journey. What can you share with us to help athletes listen in to try and add to their journeys?
Look, it's probably my most interesting part of my journey. There was a lot of downs, not so many ups, and that might be a little bit surprising because of, the AIS. If I go back a couple of years, so when I was probably in my younger years and up till probably about the age of 11 and 12, I was, captain. I was the first one picked. I was, everything. We went to the nationals. We won nationals, captain of the squad. I think I was top goal scorer, all those different things. And then from about 13, 14 to about 17, 18, I couldn't even make the state team. I didn't make the QAS. I was never part of the QAS. I was in the last intake at the AIS. When I went to the AIS, I was already signed at the Queensland Roar at the time. So I didn't make the AIS really. I sort of made it through being with the Roar. And then when I went there and trained, then I was offered a AIS scholarship, which was part of sort of the way they shaped it, because there was no league. It was no longer that National Youth League. That was sort of no longer existing, just because of the NSL. So that broke off. The NSL also, the National Youth League also broke off. So then they used the AIS more as to get all the in preparation for the under-20s World Cup. I was only there for a short time. I unfortunately developed stress fractures. And then Miron, he was the coach, he sort of asked for me to come back and come back and train with the Raw. So I was only there, I think, for a couple of months, and there was a fair bit of rehabbing at the time when I was growing, and then obviously the load of training, a little bit on artificial, and so that a lot of us sort of sustained those sort of growing injuries. But that sort of period between leading up to that OAS, there was a lot of downs there. There was I didn't get selected for anything. I couldn't make, barely. I was on the bench for local teams, from playing above an age group to coming back to my own age group. That even at Queensland, when I did make the national team at under 16s, I was on the bench in the semi-final. I came on in the last minutes. In the final, we beat, I think, Victoria or New South Wales. I can't remember. I didn't even come on. So I think I was maybe only one, or me and maybe one other player that didn't even play in the final, didn't even come on. And then, 2 years later, I was, from that whole generation, I was the first one signed in the A-League, and, went to the IS, played my first season in the A-League, and then signed over in Germany in the Bundesliga. So, so it's never just a perfect path where it's just, you go through the junior, through that transition phase, you go to the IAS, you go to the Raw, then you go to overseas. So there was times even when, I was, different conversations with my dad at the time, like, what do I do? Sort of didn't know what to do. Do I just, try? I was a bit of a later developer. So I was like, do I just take time away from the game, try to get in the gym, So, but my dad was quite good. He just said, just keep sort of, just play, enjoy. And, he understood that my time will come, I'll grow, and then it'll be a little bit different. So, and then once I did grow, then I sort of caught back up to everyone. I was faster then. But then I think the blessing there was because I was small, I was more technically gifted. I had to work on that. I had to have technically be very, very good, because I was always one of the smallest at the time. I had to be able to play against much bigger guys. So then when I grew up and I caught up, and then when I went to the IS, I was one of the fastest in terms of physical output, could run all day. And then with the technical component as well to it. So I think it's important, in those years not to give up, that everyone's road's a little bit different, and we all encounter those bumps and obstacles along the way. And so that was probably that 4, 5, maybe 6 years of tough times, and you have to be tough. You have to get through them. You have to just keep enjoying, keep working, keep trying to improve, keep striving to get better, and then again, everything can change very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's a great story, and it's one that probably resonates with a lot of younger people listening in. Is they probably are their high performers in their own age group, in their own local levels, can quite quickly move up the stage or up the pathway, whatever the ladder to the next stage quite quickly. And then they experience, when other like-minded people get to that same level, the real challenge, right? And I've seen this certainly when I was working with the national teams in terms of selecting players. It's quite easy to get, well, I use easy really loosely, right? It's quite easy to get to the national New Zealand under-17 women's level, but then everyone there is the same. And then you got to get, potentially 50 players into a squad of 20, and, a big chunk miss out. Now, the chunk that miss out or don't get selected, what do they do next? And of the, let's say, 10 that were close to selection, 5 of them who didn't get selected fell out of love with the game. It got too hard. They didn't push through. They weren't patient. They didn't have the support necessarily around them to go and keep sticking at it like you did. And 5 that didn't get selected are now on the senior national team because of potentially the support that they had around them, that mentality to keep pushing forward. Now, you had your dad, who's a fantastic coach in his own right, who's close by. What other can you think about support networks or mentality that you had kind of built in you, or other tools that you can think of that helped you stay within the game, keep moving forward? Obviously, the feedback you just gave around your dad saying, look, you will grow, you will catch them up from a physical perspective. Don't let that kind of stop you from this journey you're on. Can you think about anything else that, advice to parents listening or athletes listening around when the going gets tough? Here's 2 or 3 other things that, you can focus on. You can keep at it. You can work on other parts of your game to find different solutions. I don't know, take that where you wish, I guess.
I think the most simplest thing is you need to have that love, even when the times are tough. I think it's all well and good when everything's good to enjoy it, and when you're playing, scoring lots of goals, winning every weekend, like I was when I was younger, getting all the plaudits. But the one thing that I remember, that when it wasn't good, or okay, not that it wasn't good, but when you weren't being selected, you were missing out on these tours or making squads, making representative squads, making the Academy of Sport. I still love the game. I still wanted to play. I still wanted to go into the backyard. I still would bug my dad to come out on the weekend and go down to the park and practice. Still loved. I watched when we were younger. I used to go, every weekend when the strikers were playing in the NSL. We'd go and watch every single home game, and then also when my dad was coaching in the local leagues. I remember as a kid just hours upon hours upon hours just playing against the kids from the other clubs or kids from our club. We'd just be on the backfield just playing. So some of my best memories, and that were just at the local football club where we played, and got a lot of childhood friends that I'm still very close to. One of my best friends is from when we started playing at 4 years old, like a brother. I speak to him every single day. So I think it's a combination of a few things, and but internally it has to be that love, that you love doing it. You want to just you have a dream. I wanted to play. I wanted to, be on the pitch like the guys were in the NSL, watching Mark Viduka when he was having photos with him when they would go back to the Croatian club, Ante Milicic, these teams, the Knights and Sydney, especially being a Croatian background. So, they were 2 other teams that I really followed, really enjoyed, because I played also for a local Croatian club in Brisbane with Rockley. So, those, pretending to be these guys when we were young and, when in our little team. So, it's all these different things, just that imagination as a kid. Then, you throw in then, I think it was on Sundays on SBS, all those montages of, recording them, watching them over and over again. So it's just a love of it. And it sort of felt like that's all I knew was football. That's all I wanted to know. And I don't know what I would have done if I didn't play. So you sort of just played, and whatever sort of happened would happen. So there was always that. I wouldn't say like a belief. I know this is going to happen. I just sort of, you just play, and again, it changes very, very quickly. So from everything to nothing, and then quickly straight back into the mix. And it just shows that not everyone's path is the same. Some go from all the way through and make it all the way through. There was some that were like a 13, 14. I remember went from Queensland, went to overseas, were scouted by Premier League clubs, and never played in the A-League, never played a professional game in their life. So just because you're very good at one day, if you slow down, there's kids, or teenage boys or girls, or girls and boys that are constantly working, and there's always those stories where they miss the junior setups, and then all of a sudden they play 50, 60 to 100 caps for the national team. So everyone's a little bit different. That's why everyone's story is unique, and there's never really the perfect path. I think if you stay true to it, you want to be the best version of yourself. You look to improve every single day. It's sort of those same old words, but I think that's the secret recipe. Always, it's hard work, love for the game, and those two things are almost the most important.
Yeah, I love that. I'm making a heap of notes here. So you spoke about love. I refer to it as joy, but we've spoken in the past about stoking the fire. So as a youngster, as a even a youth player, if that fire, that internal fire goes out, then you move on to other activities, other sports, right? So part of our role as youth coaches is to keep stoking the fire within each young athlete, because they'll have, as you said, different journeys, different paths, different timelines. And when they hit that adversity, they can draw back upon the internal fire still burning strong. That carries them through those harder times, right? As well as support from mum and dad. You spoke about role models. So having Viduka as your role model, going in the back garden, trying to score goals like him, turning up to watch football games, but actually you're not actually watching the game. You're out behind the goals, kicking the ball around with the local kids. Certainly in Christchurch, English Park, that happens all the time. I think about going to a cricket game in New Zealand, a test match, and all around the outside of the boundaries, kids are playing backyard cricket. So you don't have to go to the game to watch the game. You go to the game to feel immersed in the atmosphere of it. And then that constant every day, like you need to be working hard, working towards your goals. Because if you slow down or stop, then someone's eventually going to overtake you. So again, the name of this podcast is Strive 365 for that exact reason. I'm striving towards my goal every single day of the week or of the year, because that's what it's going to take to ultimately achieve whatever dreams you set yourself to be. So yeah, some really, really, really good advice in there. Just want to kind of close this off now. You spoke about one season in the A-League and then signing a contract in Europe. So just talk around that kind of stage in your journey for, again, maybe more advanced athletes and whatever code they have about making that first big leap abroad, or that first leap into real senior professional international level football. What were some of the challenges or takeaways that you can think back of and go, okay, this I need to be really prepared for, or more prepared for, or moving abroad means these things. So any sort of advice you can give to athletes listening as they or before they experience these roadblocks to help them make that a little bit smoother?
I think nowadays everything's a lot easier with the technology, and you could learn everything about a football club or where you're going. There's those conversations can be had. You can watch the games. You can see everything. So back then there probably wasn't as much. So when I went over, it was sort of like because of the sort of not the raw footage, but it was a little bit harder. So you go over, especially as a young Australian, it was like a contract was in place, but they just wanted to see that, what they saw was sort of, that was the real thing. So, went over excited, obviously, to go, dream come true, been dreaming about it, to go overseas and to, watching, be potentially playing against teams I've been watching in the Champions League and those players. And, And it was that, then potential, then you start to maybe think about, national teams and all these different things. But, it's just a sort of just sort of like a dream come true moment, even though, it's just the start. You go over and, thoroughly enjoyed it from the start. I just, love being there, love being involved in football. I thought, there was a game that was sort of, they would play at the time, I think it was on a Thursday or something leading into a match day. So it was during their season that I came over. And I thought, it'll come down to that game when the guys play the 11v11, I'll be involved and then they'll see. But they sort of called and they said, come in, and they got me to sign before it. So I trained, I think, 3 sessions. They just saw, I trained well, and they saw, and then, I was just free and sort of to enjoy the rest. I wanted to stay. They were in the German Cup final. They were seeing the end of the season. They were doing really well, but I had to fly back just with commitments with the younger national team. So, it's again, there was ups and downs. We got, from the team being, I think they finished 6th in the league, qualified, won the German Cup. We beat Stuttgart, who won the league, beat them in the final, qualified for the Europa League. So that first season was, good. We had an unbelievable team. I had Zvezdan Misimovic, Marek Mintal. In the 10s, there was Jan Koller, Angelos Karisteas, who scored the winning goal for Greece to win the Euros. So the squad was, Russian international Ivan Sayenko. So that was, the squad itself was unbelievable. And we got relegated. So the team went down in the first season when I was there. So then the opportunity to play was hard, because I don't think anyone expected. The team was even better than the year before, and somehow nothing went right. We got relegated, went down to the second Bundesliga, and then had opportunities. So you just in football, I think you quickly learn you never know what's next. You never know what's coming. So I went, had a couple again, little sort of niggles. I had a little bit of a pain in my knee. Again, nothing serious. I just couldn't sort of get down to the bottom. It was more just a sort of muscular issue. I went looking to go on loan, went and trained again well. The clubs couldn't strike a deal. Came back after I think it was during the winter, and we played away against Freiburg, and I came on and with my first touch scored. And then from then on played quite an important part to the end of the season. So from almost leaving the club to go on loan just to play, and ended up playing quite an important role as well to help the club get promoted and go back up to the Bundesliga. So you just never know, if the clubs agreed or whatever it was that stopped it. Again, everything would have changed. It's sort of that butterfly effect that you just never know. So it's important that you train. I think the most important thing to learn is just to train every day, to do everything that you can, dedicate yourself to it, enjoy as well. I think it's important to enjoy life as well. But if that's your dream, give everything to it, because it goes very, very quickly. Even though I was lucky enough to play for about 15 years or whatever it was, it feels like, when I think back, it feels like it went so quickly. And you can sometimes get lost a little bit, especially when you go over. I went over when I was about 18, 19. And there's lots of other stuff you encounter, and within the team, and different things, how you deal with away from family. Technology wasn't as accessible as it is today, where it's very easy to talk to your loved ones, just a FaceTime call. So then it was barely, I think iMessage was just coming out and all that. So what seems normal now wasn't that normal back then, but it was a dream. It was something I loved. I was happy to sacrifice it. And, but in football, and I think in life in general, you just don't know. So it's important that, like you said, that strive to be the best version, give everything you can. And, at least then when the time does come, you'll be ready. And then again, everything can change, especially as a footballer, everything can change in one game.
Absolutely. Fantastic advice. Just to kind of close off now, just thinking about parents or support networks. Doesn't have to be parents, of course. You obviously got a little bit of, I'm assuming, impact with them in your current role, and maybe when you're working down within the academy a little bit more. But what kind of advice have you got to mum or dad or grandma or brother, insert any support person you like here in terms of you know good things to be focusing on? Like, how can they make really positive impacts on the journeys of these young athletes, maybe young coaches as well? What are some of the things through your experience that you've seen work or help contribute positively to the I guess the success or the moving closer towards their objectives?
Probably just that support, really. I think, sometimes, especially when you're young, there's a lot of distractions. There's social media. There's when you start to hit those 16, 17, 18, then the nightlife becomes a thing as well, where parties, and so those were all things that I sort of sacrificed as well. I did go obviously to some, but there was a lot. If I had a game or there was anything to do with football, that was my priority. So I missed a lot. And you sort of need people around you sometimes to keep you aligned, sometimes to help pick you up when maybe times are tough, when times are really good, to help you to keep your feet on the ground. Because I think when you're young, it's easy to sort of sometimes to maybe get lost. You haven't had those experiences to learn. And, it's sometimes, being that help, to encourage them to practice, to go out. But I think at the same, if you've got someone that's, if you have to be forced to do something, then that's probably not for you. So, I think especially now, there's, you listen to the professionals, you listen to the Ronaldos, to the Messis, they're the greatest footballers in the world. Or even if you go to different sports, with LeBron, they're at that level, and all of them, even though it's said maybe a bit differently, in essence, it's all the exact same. There's got to be a reason why these guys are doing what they're doing for such a long time and at the highest mark of the game. And when you listen to them, the words are the same. So there's no secret. There's nothing that's someone's going to come up with that's brand new. They always said with Ronaldo, if we bring him back to football, he's the first one there. He's the last one to leave. He's, everything that he does, every detail is spot on. He sacrifices everything for football. That's all he loves. He wants to do it. And that's why there's no surprise. You need obviously the talent. He's got talent, but I'm sure he worked very, very, very hard and still working very, very hard. When he's got everything, he'll leave the game as one of the greatest. And Messi's the same. And the guys I mentioned before in their different respective sports, they all have that similar story. So it's important to listen to them, and you can get it from there, and then it's that internal drive. You need to have that inside you. You can listen to the words that we talk. You can listen to the greatest in the world, what they say, but you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to do that 365 days a year. Maybe you have the occasional day off here or there, but it's pretty much, to be a professional, to be at the highest level, it's a full-time job from morning till night, from the moment you get out of your bed to the moment you lay down. And the sleep is important, how much you sleep as well. So, you have to be locked in all the time and thinking, and how can I get better? What do I need to do? And then the higher you get, once you get to the senior game, then understanding your role, what you need to do, studying the game, studying the opponent, looking after yourself, that you're available, that you can play. All these things become important. But those first few years, and also that transition phase, they're so important. That but once you become that into the professional phase, you can only train so much, because then you throw in the 6 to 7 hour bus trips, 4 or 5 hour plane rides, all these different things. You got to fly to the other side of the country, the other side of the world for international games. You play every 3 days, so then you don't have much opportunity maybe to train. Then you're more, again, mental. How are you preparing? How are you getting ready? How are you recovering? So those years, there's no time to waste, especially if you love it. From the age of 6 or 7, you've only got 10 years really, because there's 17-year-olds now. If we go Lamine Yamal, probably the biggest example, one of the best footballers in the world. He's 17 years old. And, from the age of 7 to 17, there's only 10 years, and that goes by very, very quickly. So what are you doing with your time? What are you willing to sacrifice through that as well to inevitably chase your dreams?
Hey, what a way to finish, mate. That's really sage advice. And not only for athletes listening or parents, but coaches, how are you spending your time? Now, if your objective is to help your players reach their dreams and their goals, how are you maximizing your time? But equally, if you're a coach on your journey, how are you maximizing your time to be better at your craft and move forward? So, hey, mate, I really appreciate the time you've given so far. And it's also the time difference. You're in the UK, so it's getting towards your bedtime. So let's just finish this off with rapid fire questions. Pose a question for me to answer, but I also want the audience to think about how they might answer this as well.
What's the best bit of advice you've heard from one of your guests, or something that's sort of stuck with you or resonated?
Yeah, well, so many quality guests. So yeah, for those listening, be interesting to see what people think about. Maybe we can find a way to put this in social media and everybody can share their responses as well. The one that jumped to my mind first was a fairly recent conversation, the back end of season 1, with a parent, Dean Sapolu, who had spent a lot of time in the Australian Defence Force. His concept of 2 up, 1 down resonates with me a lot recently. So the idea of having a relationship or a rapport, a connection with somebody 2 stages above you. So in my situation, say Football Pathways manager and A-League Women's assistant coach, I have kind of 2 different people 2 up. There'll be, so from an A-League Women's coaching perspective, it's head coach and then football director. So football director is 2 above me. For my Pathways role, it would be football director and then managing director or chairman or the board, effectively. So having that kind of connection 2 layers up, and also 1 down, so 1 layer below. So the junior assistant coach, for example, from an A-League Women's perspective, or the pathway coaches that I kind of work with. So yeah, I think sometimes the 2 up is really daunting for people. It's not your direct report, it's the person that they directly report into, but having that kind of connection with that person is something that, yeah, I think I believe is really critical. And from a Defence Force perspective, it's, yeah, having that clear communication lines. It's the clarity and alignment around vision and objectives. The message isn't necessarily diluted the 1 layer above, it's directly from the top. So yeah, 2 up, 1 down from Dean Sapolu would be one that comes to my mind. Dario, outline a concept or idea that you have or you use that maybe we can try in our worlds.
This was a tough one, to be fair. I've sort of gave it a bit of thought. Look, my sort of world is pretty much my family and football. So I'm probably not the best for that with the concepts, but I think it's just that probably everything we've spoken about on the chat for the last probably a bit over an hour. It's just that, striving to be your best version. Whether that's as a dad, as a husband, or as a football coach. You always want to try to be the best you can for the people that rely upon you. That because we're trying to help. We want to be successful, but if I go just to the footballing part with the players, they all have dreams. They all want to achieve different things. They want to be successful. So I always say I'll never cheat their development. So it's always, we want to get developed. We want to develop correctly. We want to have the performance. And then once we do that, then we'll worry about the result, because the result's never guaranteed. So that's probably, don't know if that sort of perfectly answers it, but it's always that, pretty much a big thing of what we've pretty much spoken about over the last hour or so.
If I gave you a magic wand and you could wave it and change one thing around the football ecosystem or coaching, what would you change?
I would probably change the junior setup. I would take away age groups. and I would play it more on profile of the kids. So maybe not always, but it'd probably be like, I think in the UK there's like that Q1 to Q4. So they have and I guess it's a similar in Australia where you have your born in January, and obviously the kid's born in December, but then someone in January could be a lot smaller than someone born in December. So I think the best way would be to maybe align kids where they can, play with similar size, especially in those development ages, once there is, big differences. And then also, I think one thing with my son watching was size of pitches. So I would play a lot more smaller fields. So instead of 7v7s at under 8s, and I know each sort of federation is a little bit different. I know in Victoria, they opt to go, so at under 7s, they're already playing 7v7. I would keep it 3v3, maybe introduce a goalkeeper with bigger goals and just play 3v3 games and try to get it where, smaller pitch, where it helps their decision making, a lot more touches, and I think that would help the development of football.
Yeah, I love it. I echo those as well. What's one piece of advice that somebody gave you that you can give us?
One bit, it was probably, again, when I was very young, and I can't remember if it was Melbourne Knights or Sydney United. They were actually at the time at the Croatian club. They would come after the game, they would get food, and I would walk around with a football. I'd get a signed jersey signed, the old NSL playing cards that I collected, I'd get them all signed. And I remember one of the players, I can't remember the name now. I've sort of lost the name over the years. This was a long time ago, probably 30 years ago. This was probably when I was 8 or 9 years old. He just wrote down, "Be good." And I remember asking, and he never really gave me the answer. He sort of asked me, "What do you think?" And I gave a couple of answers, what I thought, but obviously as an 8, 9-year-old, it probably wasn't the right ones. So that's something that sort of stuck with me. And whenever I'm asked questions like that, that's one that's, everyone can have a different interpretation of it. So what that means to you, and in that moment of what they said, that was all that was written. Just wrote, "Be good," and you never really got an answer to his interpretation. But so it's probably one that sticks out, and it's one that you can interpret whichever way you want.
Nice one. Provide us a quote that resonates for you.
Probably the one I use with my football teams. So effort, intensity, and attitude. They're the three that we build on, and that's sort of the foundation that we have our trainings, our football, how we play, how we approach things, and so it's very, very similar then for me as well, how I like to operate, and so yeah, that's probably my three.
And last one for you, what are you striving for today?
There's not too much left in today, but
Today
it's the same every day in a way. Just have that blending that family life with football life. Not trying to get one mixing with the other. You try to have it a bit separate, but in terms of that, just trying to get better, enjoy the time with my family as well. Watching my kids grow up. My son's playing football at the moment as well, so love to go and just sort of, it's a chance to just disconnect, go and watch him play and enjoy, and sort of brings me back to my days and playing and enjoying. So on that side, that's my probably the part I enjoy the most. But from the football side, it's just that wanting to get better and trying to be best version of myself, and also be the best version of myself to help the players in my team.
Hey Dario, it's been a pleasure, mate. It's been good to see you again. Been following your progress of your team over the last few months. So a couple of notes I put down here. You never know what's next. I think you said that a number of times in a number of different ways, and your coaching journey is a real testament to that. So hopefully what is next is a good run of results now that everybody's back fit, come back from the international break, and you finish out the season meeting your objectives, and you can build on from that for next year. So, hey, mate, it's been great. No doubt people listening from all three perspectives have taken some notes away from this. So I really appreciate your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, and it was great to see you and great to chat.
We hope you found that conversation helpful. And if so, we'd love it if you could show us some gratitude, either through your word of mouth, finding our social pages and hitting like and share, or you can shout us a coffee. using the link in the show notes below. Your support is greatly appreciated.